Hello and welcome to the Sunday Miracle Lab. This is Shirley, and I am streaming live on my Facebook group, Miracles with Shirley, and also on YouTube. And so, welcome to today's Miracle Lab. And what we do in the Miracle Lab is we explore and expand our minds and our understandings and our hearts to be able to make way for a miracle. For miracles to happen in every area of life. So welcome to today's Miracle Sunday Lab. Today I was going to talk about, can we evoke God? Can we evoke God? If you look at most of the evolutionary religions, even the ones that are on the darker side, they're all, like the rules and the structures and the ideas of how we evoke God, how we get God to do what we want God to do, right? In the bottom of it, underneath everything, is I'm from a background of evolutionary religion in my family system, and it was interesting because in my family we believed that that if we prayed and if we did certain things, that we wouldn't that our children would be safe, that there would be safety from the storms of life, from our relationship with God. So all of our ideas, rituals, many of those things were centered around the idea of I do A, B, C, D, or A, B, C, and D, and because of that, I get a pass or a special favor with God in regards to miracles or just ease in life. And I'm here to say that those things are beautiful, and there are many, many good things that have come about from that. If I look at the things in my family that have come about from the evolutionary religions and the influence and our pacts and ideas that we have made with God and our family, there have been many, many good things. My family enjoyed, I don't know, something like 30, 40 years without a child death, from these beliefs that we held as a family very dearly. And so many of these things do really help us, right? They really do, like it's almost like this reality is run by our faith in something. And even if your faith is not really grounded in the highest reality, as we know that many of the evolutionary religions are not grounded in all of the diversity and the brilliance of love that we come from. But they have many good things in them. And so if we're looking for a miracle, if we're wanting a miracle, many of us are asking, how do we increase our spiritual girth to the place of being able to do supernatural things and be able to evoke God and have our prayers answered and have our needs met, right? And so this is something that we can do. I do believe that we can evoke God, but I believe that the rules of that are a little bit different than many people believe. Many of the things that we can do center around soul development, right? I am of the school of thought that this is a school, this planetary system is a school, and that I am enrolled in the game of life, and that there are many rules that guide this reality. And the number one rule is the rule of the number one rule is the the number one rule is that it's all set about as to what your soul is wanting to experience here. That is the guiding parameter of the rules that are set up for you. And we can see one of the things that I've studied a lot of is the ancient technologies, or the ancient wisdoms, and the way that they come forward in all of these really beautiful and complex mathematical and different ways that are considered to be nonsense by most of the planet, right? Astrology, hand analysis. There's all of these different coded systems that help us to understand what our soul is after. I do believe that God is in a different vibrational plane, right? Like I believe that God is here with us. I don't believe that we are truly separate. It's like the air that's breathing my lungs is really God, right? Tune in for just a moment to your breath and just feel your breath. And just feel God breathing you, breathing your lungs. It's very interesting, people that study different practices that take you into very deep states of being. They always come up with these very simple hacks. One of them is was done by Jack Adam Weber, and he's anti-spiritual, so I don't know that that was his intention with it, but he was looking simply at how do we get to that place of stillness and peace, like the kind of stillness and peace that you get to after you've done 20 years of Qigong, or 20 years of yoga, or 20 years of forgiveness practice, or whatever it is, right? Like a dedicated, deep dive. And what he found is simply by allowing, just like waiting until the breath breathes us, suspending our breath until that moment when it actually just automatically happens. That is a way of really calling in or evoking that God essence, that channel. I believe that God is always there, but we are not always listening. We are not always open. We tune to different channels. We can tune to drama channels with sisters, and drama with clients, and drama with whatever part of life we're in, right? Grocery store dramas and dramas with neighbors and things like that. We can go tune into sports, and we can tune into the adoration and worship of the accumulation of safety in the form of money. We can tune into all these different radio stations, but for us to really tune into the God spark place, we must we must tune to that channel, right? Like, for us to go there, we can go there. Any of us can go there if we so choose to. I think that a lot of people don't really understand the anatomy of life, and the anatomy of the spirit world, and the anatomy of our dimensional selves that are all suspended in different, they're animating different areas, just as our smell is animating one part of life. Our eyes are animating another, and our ears another, but those are different dimensions. And they are all streaming together into one, oh gosh, I'm just like going into like trance state here. And that's one of the other ways that we can really tune into the God source, tune into our bigger self, and integrate all of our aspects into one place, is to actually just yawn. Yawning is so beautiful. Whenever we yawn, we open up to collect other parts of ourselves. So if we find that we're stuck in the mental mind, going, by sitting and taking a minute and just yawning, we begin to say, oh, I'm opening up the doors to the other parts of myself. I'm opening up the doors to my emotional self. I'm opening the doors to my physical self. Maybe my body needs to move. Maybe my body needs this or that. Like I can't hear my body when I'm in my head, right? Most of us can't. So then just by simply yawning and just relaxing for just a minute, we can integrate and pick up more parts of ourselves. We can open the doorways. And this is what happens when we begin to go into trance states. Now, I have a vision, and in my vision, and this is just, it's something that's come forward. It's not something that my vision changes every year. It expands into deeper aspects of it every single year. It becomes more clear. The way becomes more defined. All the other windows of life close down, and I collapse on into the possibility of my highest good and my highest life. So when we integrate into ourselves, it's like we're opening up all of our dimensional senses, and we're opening up our supernatural senses. And don't yawn with me if you're driving, but or pull over on the side of the road if you are, and do some yawning with me. But when we integrate all of our parts, I've done an exercise with you before into the yielding, also getting ourselves into higher love states. And when our hearts are bitter, it's really difficult to get into higher love states for other human beings. Now, I find that if I do a healing, if I hold a healing for children, there's a lot of people that come. If I hold healings for adults, not a lot of people come, because it's harder for us to love other adults than it is for us to love children. Children don't have the things in them that the resistance is activated, right? For our judgment side to start taking over. So we can become integrated. When we become integrated, we more narrow down all of the bandwidth channels and open them into the bigger channels, the bigger, more eternal-based channels. I was working in my sister's garden this morning, right before I came here, and just helping dig out a couple beds. It was a garden group invitation. And so beautiful how connecting with the soil and connecting with the earth and being in the body and the earth and nature is one of the ways that we can really connect with God. It's like it's always there, just waiting for us to come and to connect. And that's why prison is so cruel, because we cut the prisoners off from the only things that can heal them, right? The nature reconnects up our neural pathways and helps us to become whole again. By actively participating in nature and being in nature, we can pull open, like we can open a portal to God. One of the things that I really love is essential oils, because essential oils are like love letters from God in a bottle, right? They have beautiful messages, eternally beautiful, fantastic messages, and the meaning of them. So it's like all of my supernatural senses are paying attention and reading that information, reacting and conspiring with that information, even if I'm not aware of what's going on. So it's a vibrational shift. You can pull out an essential oil. You can tune, like oregano has the message of honesty. Peppermint is enlivening, and it has a refreshing energy. So if I am in need of refreshing in my spirit, peppermint is one of my go-tos. Oh, I am just yawning this afternoon. So I must be integrating a lot. I've had a lot of pushes here lately in my life, and a lot of pressure. And it's interesting, because like, can we find the grace in the middle of the pressure, right? To actually live our lives, enjoy our lives, stay integrated, and really be involved with life in a full and beautiful way, even when we're stressed, right? Like you find, like in looking at hands, there's so many things that happen to so many different people. And some people can take those, they can be experiencing the same events, but they can have completely different reactions to those events, right? I know that I was reading hands for this gentleman once, that he had this really, really pure heart line. It was just unencumbered. It didn't have all this energy giveaway that you normally see in the heart lines of most people. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And I was curious, what is different about this gentleman than the other people that I know? And he was kind of a duck off the water, or water off the duck's back kind of guy, right? Like he told me that his sister was really traumatized by their childhood, the childhood they both shared. The parents worked all of the time, and because they worked, there was plenty of money to go do things on the weekends and things like that. Sometimes they traveled, but the sister felt alone and abandoned all the time by her parents, and so she has all this trauma around it. Now he felt like he just got to do what he wanted to do, and that there wasn't anybody in his way, and they had money to go do the things they wanted to do on the weekends and things like that. So he felt like he had just a great childhood, right? His sister felt like she had an awful childhood. So it's amazing that the same thing, the same set of circumstances can happen to two different people, but because of their core wounds, because of the things that they want and need, they can often have very different reactions to that same set of circumstances, right? And life, I feel like becoming a pure heart is what we're all after, right? Is learning how to adapt to the things that life throws at us, and to keep our calm, right? Because we don't have the whole story. I was listening to this thing the other day where this woman was talking about, her house burning down, and how it was, like considered by a lot of people to be one of the most horrible things ever. But if she looked at the good things that came from that she would never have gotten or received if it wasn't for that, the outpouring of strangers that came in her time of need, that gave to her. She pretty much said that she got rid of something old, a bunch of her old things, and she got a bunch of new things because people came, and she made a lot of friends, and she had a lot of connection, and she had so she can't really say that, well, the fire happening was a bad thing, because, well, something came of it that was really beautiful for her. And, I think that we do so much to try to evoke God. When we want God, when we want God to be present in our lives, when we want a miracle, when we want something beautiful to happen, when we want to find our missing loved one, when we want to make sure that our children are safe, then we want this relationship with God, where God will move and shift the fabric of reality for us, right? And then there's, that's one way of relating to God, right? That's one way, but there's other ways that we can relate to God, which is to try to reach more into understanding, to reach more into the big picture of what's going on in our lives. I know that I've had a couple things in the last few years that haven't gone my way, miracles that I wanted to happen that did not happen for me. And yet, if I had gotten a yes on those things, it would have changed the trajectory of my life in ways that I would not be experiencing now. And I wouldn't know many of the people that I know now. I wouldn't be working with the people that I'm working with now if I had gotten a yes. And, there's wisdom in every holding place that we're in life, and every transition, and every place that we are going through and experiencing, every circumstance, there is a purpose to it. And that is really the perspective of the spiritual self. If you look at the physical self, it's all just survival of the fittest and the luck of the draw, and a lot of facing the harshness of reality, right? And if we look at the emotional self, its truths are that how I feel supersedes any and all things, right? Which is beautiful in some ways, that we can rise into that level of clarity. But it's also can be a place where we can circle for thousands of years in torment, right? Our mental self can really provide, it's really not the most informed part of us to talk about the things of the heart or the things of eternity, the things of where we come from. But it's beautiful to engage if we want to complete a task or figure out a process, right? Absolutely beautiful. But the spiritual perspective is different than that. And the spiritual perspective says that all of this has meaning. All of this has purpose. All of this is by design. And all things will work together for good. That is what the spiritual self will echo. If you were to go into the spiritual realms and to speak to the beings of those realms, you would find that they are just beautiful and lovely and pure positive and full of faith and full of expectant gratitude in every area and compassion and all of the other things. But it's not like none of it's looked at as bad from that lens. But many say that we have gathered here so that we could begin to see the God family move, right? That there are beings that have come from all of the different levels of the galaxy to different places to be here for this grand momentous occasion. Because the Spirit of God, the grand master of all things, is being evoked, right? But what does that invocation look like? What does it look like for many people? If you look at the different religions around the world and the different belief systems, the different faiths, you'll find that people that from these faiths, they believe that it is some external force, some external thing that is going to be happening. If you go into the Christian world, there's a lot of ideas about this time in history that Hi, Jeannie. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming. There are a lot of things about this time in history that are very, very important. And in the evolutionary religions, like Christianity, for one, this is the time when Christ returns and spares people from certain destruction. If you look at some of the other religions of the world, they have ideas about this time as well. Christianity was rooted in Judaism, and Judaism has a lot of ideas about this time. They consider that this is the time that their Messiah is coming. They don't believe that Christ was a Messiah. They believe he was a false Messiah. And, it's very interesting how many of the religions and many of the different things are kind of circling around this time in history. But if we were to talk to the souls, and if we were to talk to the spirit world, and if we were to talk to people about the significance of this time, they would say that, this is the time when we're starting to figure it out. And it's like a giant leap is made forward. And that everybody wants to watch this and witness it and be a part of it. So I'm really excited about that. I mean, that idea. I mean, even in the native, there was the time of the white buffalo woman, and actually the white buffalo was born this spring. And this prophecy has been around for generations that this would be the great time of things really changing and things becoming different. And I really believe that what is this great thing, this great event that's happening? This is the overcoming of the lower energies. Right now, we have to live with the lower energies. We have to live with them in our marriages, and our children have to live with them. And it's like a plague that feels awful, that follows us around all of the time here. But coming is the time when these things are outgrown. These things are transcended. These things are moved past. I was looking the other day, like there's a lot of stuff going around on Facebook about that yoga's demonic, right? Like, and I have to laugh a little bit because I grew up in a very religious place where that's what I was taught from the time I was a small child, is everything was satanic. It was kind of like our church's thing, and demonic, right? And I often think like, oh my goodness, these folks that say these things, they don't even know what demons are, right? If that's the case, because our understanding of demons is that they're very dark and very meaning harm, meaning evil towards, right? And if you look at, like the original source of a lot of the information on demons came from Christ and Christianity. And, it's interesting if you listen to his talks or read his talks that were in his original language, which was spoken in the Aramaic. And it's a heart-based language. We have our translations today from the Greek. But this heart-based Aramaic, the demons they're like a byproduct of our creative energy and the void, right? Like it's almost like when they talk about the description of these demons, it is a thought pattern that is developed by man, right? But it isn't that. I don't believe that that's really a total true interpretation. The Aramaic has so many different loaded words. Like the word blessed means God implanted in you neural patterns that will guide you, and if they ever become inactive, then do these things to reactivate them. That's what the word blessed means, right? So we lose so much meaning in our translations of these words. But the world of demons, like I've done a pretty deep dive into that, and it is a world where things are, it's like there's the void, right? If you can understand that the astral plane is like a neutral superhighway that we can travel, and if you're of a higher vibration and a higher understanding and a higher frequency, then you can like get in the elevator and you can take a trip to the higher realms. But if you are of a lower vibration and you get into the elevator, you can take a trip to the lower realms as well. And if you can understand that in this void space of the astral plane, the antimatter or the subspace or whatever of it, that the act of our being here and our being these supernatural God-sourced beings, that this place that is void of life begins to teem with life that is not as highly informed. If we were to have a contest and put all souls in a art space or something and say, create the greatest thing ever, right? You would find that, like the soul can only create what level it's at, right? So like in the beginning of us being here, we began to create, with our imagination, and we began to have almost like creatures that came to life due to us lending him the energy to do so. And that is what I believe the lower energies are, right? And it's like not full of sunshine. It's not full of love. It's full of something that's other than that. And these things gain energy. The more of us that create, the more of us that lend our imagination and our spiritedness to these lower entities. And by bringing them, we endue them with our life, with our soul power. Now, it's amazing what else we can do with our soul power, right? So it's almost like we can go and put 1 billion units of energy into something that's negative, and it's only going to build something negative, right? But we can go and we can even put 10 or 15 units towards something that's really positive, something that's in true alignment with us, something that our energy can actually flow towards. And then what happens is that we can create something even more amazing. And every day we have the choice whether we are going to create with the shadows or we're going to create in the light. Every moment of every day, we can either choose to believe the best in others. We can believe that the best is going to happen. It's hard because we have to have our sights tuned to so many different levels of reality. If you're a man in today's world and you're not tuned into provision, then you're a fool, right? And if you're a woman and you're not tuned into nurturing, well, then you're a fool as well, right? Because the other things will not ever be as satisfying for a woman. And as the nurturance and the life that we can bring into our offspring. And so with these lower energies, though, like they, and then what happens is that once we lose them here, they begin to run in packs. They begin to, and the thing is that you can go and you can clean your inner house. And, like if we really understood the level of demonic interaction that we're having each and every day, We would actually be really frightened. And, like, it's not really as scary as we make it out to be. If you were to look at the lower energy of, let's just say, I mean, even guilt can feel like a lower energy. Shame can certainly feel like a lower energy. Self-pity can feel like a lower energy. It's like all of these places where the substance is missing, right? The context is missing. Things are isolated. They've gone to an extreme, out of balance place, right? Like we all have something to contend with in the lower energy realm, period. And the success in our lives depends on how well we interact with that realm. And this is the work that I do in hand analysis, because there's a code in your fingerprints that can tell you what that area of life that you don't like to interact with, that you need to, so that you can have a successful life, right? And what I help people do is I help people navigate this. This is just one of the things, but I know it's the biggest tool that I can give to people, is to undergird them in the ways that they're challenged. Right? So it basically, you can say that the lower fingerprints are the places where we have the most demonic interference. Now, a lot of people don't like to use that word. They're scared of it, right? They're scared. They're superstitious. I find the more that you avoid those things, I mean, there's just a lot of ways to look at it that are very adult. It's different ways of understanding things. It's a dimensional shift, right? Just like this beam that's behind me, there's a few different rays of color, right? We can go into the shadow or we can go into the light, and we have the choice of that in any given moment. But it's like, let me just see if I can find a story, an illustration. I'm having a little problem right now with my neighbor, who is also my sister. So, and then that's wonderful. I love her dearly. She knows I do. And well, they can come from inner pain, but they come from an original believing of a lie that isn't true. If you were to understand the absolute plastic nature that we are when we are children, it's like, so my original wound, and one way to kind of look at this too, is to look at where your Lilith is in your astrological chart. What kind of a creature is your Lilith, right? In other words, is it a Taurus? Is it a Libra? Is it what is your Lilith? Now, mine is I believe a Scorpio. And it's very interesting, because like in the way that the lower energies have laid with me and have whispered in my ear and have kept me circling basically to where they're feeding off of my energy, and where I'm not going forward and doing the things that I want to be doing with my energy instead. The conditioning happens very, very early. And so we get sensitized, right? We begin to think, these lower energies, they lay with us and they tell us that we are not enough. We are, we have guilt just for being who we are. We have shame for being who we are. We have all of these different we feel like we're not lovable. Where do these things come from? Are they real, right? They're just shadows. And when you bring them into the light, you'll see they're absolutely not true, even though we have 1 billion pieces of evidence by the time we're even 10 that these things are absolutely true, because this is the way that these energies have been hounding us. There's like a genetic disposition when our grandparents' lessons that are not absolutely learned transfer through the bloodlines, right? When our parents and our lineages, there is a weak link in that area. And that is a place where the lower energies can expose and can feed. So, if you look at JFK, right, he had the fingerprints of not enough. And so did Charles Manson. He had the fingerprints of not enough. So that means that the lower energies from the time that they were both born sat with them and told them and whispered in their ear that they're not enough. You're not enough. You'll never be enough. You're not enough, right? You don't have enough. Charles Manson did some really awful things with his not enough. JFK let those not enoughnesses change him into creating more and more and more. He rose inside. He rose. So basically we have these lower energies, but what we do with them is really, really personal. And it isn't even, you can have the same, like same basic difficulties, right? So the thing is that these lower energies, they lay with us from the time we're children, and they whisper in our ears, and we think that they are us. So one of the things that I notice about men in general is that they think that there is something wrong with them, that there's a shame just in being male. And that's one of the ways that the lower energies really kind of fools men. Like men actually identify with these lower energies as being part of themselves. That is this part of them that would do these things, this part of them that would go to these lengths, right? And what I've found and what I've learned from the higher energies, because we can go into the astral plane and we can begin to co-create with higher energies. And when we do that, they teach us things about how this realm works. And what they told me is that we are all innocent in this. The lower energies basically get to live a half-life through us if we let them. I do believe that all murder is committed by these entities. I do believe that all rape is committed by these entities. I do believe that all major crimes are committed by these entities. And it just depends on how much power we give them in our lives and how quickly we identify them. When we are circling in painful realities inside of ourselves, let's just say, let's go back to the thing where I was just trying to give an example. I was, this is an example just from my week, right? And, it's like we were having a conversation, my husband and I, about the difficulty that we're having with my sister. She just has an adjustment disorder, right? So whenever you do something different, she's going to freak out. She's going to be like a cat on an inner tube, right? I love her dearly, but there's a place where whenever you have to approach something, you're a little fearful because you're going to get that pushback that's difficult, right? And it's really easy when that pushback comes to go into negative places and to go into lower energies with that, right? But if we just look at it and say, this is a person I love. This is a person that will always be in my life. This is a person that's having a problem right now. It probably has nothing to do with me, right? They're going through some kind of transition that everything is so desperate in this situation, right? And we can ground into the fact that we love this person and the fact that we, like we can go two ways with it. We can either go into the lower energies and say, oh, well, she's a whatever and whatever, right? Or we can go into and say, this person's having a problem and I love her and I'm not going to take it personally, right? That she's having a difficulty. And that's just one small example, but we can find many, many other great examples, right? Like where we can cut off the effects, because if you were to look at these huge differences that we all have between us, these huge divisions that we allow to happen between us, right? Between father and son, between husband and wife, between, mother and daughter, and all of the people in between, sister and brother, neighbor, between black and white, between any culture and any other culture, between man and woman, right? We have been exploited by these lower energies, right? We go into these magical thinkings. We get triggered by the original wound every single time that someone doesn't immediately love you. You can get triggered into that original place that got carved out when you were a small child, that where you went into a place of I'm not lovable just because someone couldn't connect with you, right? That's a magical place, a magical place. So yeah, we do have inner pain that surround the guilt and the shame, and that's the emotional level, and we can come to emotional truths in that level, right? Like, to overcome shame, we have to come into the light, and we have to love ourselves, and we have to accept ourselves just as we are and unshame ourselves, right? Like, somewhere we picked up that being the way that we are is wrong, right? I'm spiritually dominant, and it's very unusual, actually. A lot of people don't even understand what it is, and that's fine. But it is like the way that you think about the world is like completely back-ass opposite of how everybody else thinks about the world. And if you can imagine, if you ever share any of your ideas, if you ever just open your mouth, I mean, I regularly go for a walk, and I just can't help being myself. And the person runs from me, right? Like I go places and I talk about things that other people aren't comfortable talking about. I've got really big energy, and I've got a really, really different point of view. And a lot of times people can't really accept that. It's overwhelming for them. And so like, it's fine, but there's a place where I've come out of shame with myself, where I've begun to partner with myself and say, okay, so only 1 in 100 people think like I think. Look at the world like I look at the world, and problem solve like I problem solve with my life, right? And think that the things that are possible about the world are possible. And most of that 1% are a little la-la, right? And so that's great. But there's a place where, like, this is mine. This is who I am. This is where, and to, even though you see, if you were to look in the world of worldviews, accommodations, there's least accommodations for this particular worldview. Everywhere you go, if you go to the bank, they will have no appreciation of this worldview. If you go to the grocery store, they will have no appreciation of it. If you go to a football game, they will have no appreciation of this worldview. So it is truly a very, very being a very, very different person than others. But there's a place that I've entered into it with myself where I'm actually have unshamed myself in that particular area. And there's gifts and bounty that all of the different perspectives bring to the world. But imagine how valuable mine is, because it's so different and so rare, right? I have more to contribute in some ways because of that, right? Because it's bringing something that's absolutely new, something that's absolutely refreshing, something that's absolutely different, right? So the shame and guilt do come from inner pain, but they're fed, and their origins begin with the lower energies feeding on us, feeding them to us. And the more that we move out of I'm unlovable and into I am lovable, and the more that we move out of I don't have enough into I do have enough and I am enough, and all of those different things, the more we are empowering a higher spiritual reality here, the more we are in tune with the higher level of being that we come from. Because all of the other stuff that's in that shadow realm, it's all just a grotesque imagination, right? It's not really real. We are all inherently valuable. We are all, like, the opposite of guilt is integrity, right? To be in our integrity is to stand in our worth. To stand in guilt is to not stand in our worth, right? To just live in a guilty place. People with guilt life lessons, they sit with like this guilt gnawing at their guts all day, every day, in every situation, over and over and over again. All they do is just eat crumbs in their life, right? And what life is calling them to do is to get out of that shadow living and get into the light of their own integrity, where they decide their worth, where they connect up to the bigger part of them that is of intrinsic value. And shame, it's the same thing, to get out of shame. I mean, shame is hard because we can't often even see it, right? We can't even, like, the thing that shameful people are really good at is hiding their own shame from themselves. They deflect and they move it away whenever it comes near. So they don't even look at it. They numb themselves. So it's hard for shame-based people. We all have shame, but some people have shame where they are just like hiding and running from it all the time, just like gaslighting themselves into thinking that it's not there, right? And some of us really have a hard time being in a group and being around other people. That's one of the other life lessons. Some of us have a life lesson with feeling like a failure, where it's just like you can't really do it. You don't have the strength, right? That's one of them. Another one is being powerless and helpless and overwhelmed. Another one is just always having provision issues, right? That's one of the ways that lower energies sit with us is, just not enough money, man. That's like, it's a huge one, like people that have that, the lower energies lay at them from the time that they're little, and they tell them that, it's all because they don't have enough money. And we can see a real negative manifestation of this. People don't understand that the people that have the most money in the world, most of them are people that are producing things of value, right? It's not as simple as just taking money away from the rich and giving it to the poor. That's not how, that wouldn't solve anything. It wouldn't solve anything. The problem is the life lesson of not believing in your intrinsic access to abundance, right? That's where the issue is for these people. The inner resourcing that's needing to happen, and the outer resourcing that's needing to happen. So we can also, there's so many different ways. There's so many rejection issues and things like that can show up for people. But yes, these lower energies sit with us from the time we're children. They may make us believe that we are them, and we are not them. We are none of these things. We are all innocent. We are all completely 100% innocent in this experience. And the more that we identify with these lower energies, the more we do commit crimes and do things like that. And because like if you've ever watched somebody commit a really heinous crime like I have, right, you'll see that there's something else that comes and takes over their matrix, something else that is running the show. And it's very interesting because females inherently kind of disown their lower energy sides, and men embrace them in the way that they actually so identify with them that they it's just really hard to get men to believe that they're not these lower energies. Like they just doubt it. Like they just look at it as their shadow side or their dark side, their part that they're integrating, right? Not realizing that this hot potato was never really theirs, right? One of the channels that I did with Oversouls, they came and they talked, and they were talking about a family member. And the thing is, it's like they were saying that he felt as though if people knew who he really was, if people knew all of these different things, that they'd never be able to love him, that they'd never be able to forgive him. And, he's carrying around all this shame and all of this, sexual shame and all of these different things. And, they talked about how when they look at him, that they do not see these things, that he's innocent in all of this. And that I actually should really bring out the channel because it's super touching and very, very sweet and beautiful. Like he's afraid. And so he disowns his greatness. He disowns his purity. He disowns his, it's like he's over-identified with these lower energies to the point of where he doesn't even see the difference between himself and them. So it is a really interesting thing, so we do have inner stuff that's going on. We do have shame and guilt and all of those different things, but it's really what we do with them, right? It's how much we allow them access in our life, in each and every situation. With every person that we meet, we can either say, guess what? This person's going through something right now that has nothing to do with me. And I can love this person through this. I can lead in love, right? Or we can go into all this bitching, complaining, and myopic, whatever, and binding and tying them. And if you want to look at demonic interaction is the way that we bind each other in negativity, because every time you think those negative thoughts about your brother or your sister or you're this or you're that, you actually use your creative life force energy to tie those lower energies more deeply to them. At least that's what's come forward out of some people's life in between life experiences or near-death experiences, is that like this one woman that I watched, she said, like, we have, we bind each other by our judgments about one another. We bind and like that's, like it's difficult to get those binds like off of ourselves when other people put us in judgment of like, she's always this way, or she's always that way, or she's always doing this, she always messes up, or whatever it is. So anyway, so today I was going to talk about the whole, can we evoke God? But I believe that it is a vibrational switch, right? So just like these little rays of things behind me, if you can imagine, there's a shadow side, and we can go and we can choose to see the shadow. We can choose to make it horrible. We can choose all of these different things, right? And often in our emotional realm, when we authentically relate with something, just like the sister that I talked about that had a horrible experience because she felt her parents had abandoned her. She had all this emotional pain about it. And the brother that was just like, what? It was awesome. I got to do what I wanted to do. I didn't have parents in my face all the time. So there's different things that we can do, like there's a way that we can begin to look at the things that come in our lives as opportunities. Now, I had a couple of really miraculous miracles that happened this week. Okay. One of my sons was missing and he didn't have a phone. His phone was dead and he's in a strange city and nobody can find him and all that stuff. Right. And a little bit of moment of mama worry. Right. But, I used my soul technologies and I performed a little miracle, got involved with it. And yeah, so that has lower energies just written all over it, Jeannie. So if we were to unpack that, there's something magical that happened in your childhood experience that made it to where you embodied that negativity in relationship to your father. And I would bet if I were to actually talk to your father today, that he would not have those same things to say. He might have a few things that he is disappointed in or whatever. Like we all have these little areas where we can go into negativity, right? But it's not the truth. You're probably the very best thing that has ever happened to your father, right? That's the honest God truth. And anything that is in him would be lower energies that would not allow him to see that, right? But the more that you empower that kind of reality, the more that you experience that, the more you're tormented. And that torment is hell, right? To sit in that torment of like, I am my dad's disappointment. That's hell. Those feelings that are evoked from that, that's hell. And you can go down into the bottom of that pit for eternity, and you can exhaust all of the stories about that. You could play out 500,000 billion trillion different stories of how you're your dad's disappointment and let it just eat you and carve you, right? But that's the lower energies. That's what hanging out with lower energies feels like. That's what hanging with the demonic feels like. It's awful. And basically, what they say is that when we are putting off these energies, right, they create a place to feed off of us, which is they get you as a magical little child to believe something awful about yourself that isn't true. You know, I took as a child, it's worse the older he gets mad at you and can't remember why. Well, that's dementia, right? So that this is, you know, the thing that really sucks is when we don't work on our shit, when we don't clear the table, when we don't clear it out, clean it out, it compounds in us as we age and it gets worse and worse and worse, right? So I don't think that that's actually the truth. I think that you actually really love your dad. And I remember not too long ago, you were doing a lot to bake him a cake. You do all these wonderful things for him. And so this is the way that they've been feeding on him, and then they feed on him, and then it feeds on you, and it opens a portal in you. And guess what? They're getting to live your life, and you're getting to experience something that is closer to hell than heaven. And it's a dimensional shift to shift into the light. It's a dimensional shift to shift back into the truth. So if you begin to really, like, if you could write a rescue kit for yourself to when you begin to feel this way, like you're your dad's disappointment, because I bet it feels absolutely awful when you feel that, right? When you feel like even the idea of being your dad's disappointment is just absolutely heart-wrenching, right? Because you love him and you want him to love you back. And so what you can do with this is while you're in that place, when you get activated and triggered, there's a lot of things that you can do to get yourself out of that space. One of the ways that's really quick is to just hold, like just immediately shift that's a little girl that's hurting, shift with her, and just begin to move your eyes from left to right. Even if your eyes are closed, just move them left and right, hold her, and just walk her out of there, because that's what it's like to the brain. When we move things left to right, it's like walking. We can also take inside of our ears when we're feeling that way, and we can just kind of pull down a little bit, just inside the ear, right? Pull down. And what will happen is that we actually we're opening up a connection to our vagus nerve. And we're bringing in some deep relaxation. We can also do some yawns, right? We can, but basically you've got to bring her out of there. You've got to bring her out of there, out of that room, because there's a deep, deep trigger, which the way that I draw it with the life lesson is like, okay, you're just walking along through life, and here's the thing. And then there's this big pit you fall in, right? And the big pit hurts like so bad. And the thing is that once we begin to attend and bring truth and bring clarity and bring the higher truths to this part over and over again, I'm gonna play a little song real quick, because this song is like what I did for my inner child, right? Because the loop that was created in me and the way that they fed on me is also, well, not enough as one of them, but that's more of a sub layer, or it's not the deepest pit, but it's a pretty big pit, right? A lot of people ask me like why I'm involved in so many different things, right? And the truth is because I didn't feel like I was enough, right? So I felt not enough, so I had to become a better cook, and I'd become better at this, and I'd be better at that, and better and better, 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 better. And at the end of it, I've become so much because of that not enough. It's been a place where the light has been able to enter, like in some ways that crack is the place where light eventually gets to come through. But let's just I'm going to just play a song really quick, and I'm just going to play the beginning of it. But this is me attending to my little girl and telling her that she's got to come out of that room, right? Because it's not. Oh yeah, no, don't worry about that. Yeah, so my son, so what I ended up doing was I sent him a telepathic message, right? His phone wasn't working, and we were worried about him, and he's in a city, and he didn't come back to the Airbnb and things like that. So anyways, so I sent him a telepathic message where I just really focused in on him, and I focused on whispering in his ear and telling his brain and just sending him a message that he needed to come back to the Airbnb, that he needed to charge his phone, anyways, 15 minutes later, he ended up back at the B&B. He got the message. Someone had asked him to jam with them and play guitar, but he got the message and felt like he shouldn't, right? So it's amazing. So I used my soul technologies to, instead of just worrying and sitting and worrying about my son being in a strange big city by himself with no phone, and where is he, and is he going to catch his ride home? I instead did something different. So I interrupted the pattern, right? The pattern is to just go into worry, go into fretting, go into nihilistic thinking and things like that, right? Which just all compounds the situation. And if we just want the problem to be solved, we can instead use our soul technologies to do different things, right? So that happened. One other time this week too, one of my brothers has a lot of trauma, and he's an alcoholic, and he's a genius. He's absolutely gifted, and he's the one that's helping me with my album, and he's really wonderful. But they put him on some medications to try to help him quit drinking, and it really, really messed him up because it was like he was drinking and doing them, and he couldn't not drink because he's an alcoholic, right? So they kind of did something that was, these drugs were just awful. He fell down, and he's just like, his whole face is just like swollen, and his lips are cracked, and you look him in the eye, and all of a sudden he's sitting there, and then all of a sudden he's like, like he like almost like falls asleep, and then like, what happened? Anyways, these drugs they had him on were super duper scary. I've never seen him so messed up. I'd rather him be drunk a million times over than have him be on these particular things, right? So he just, and he was so stiff and so hurt that he couldn't even sit down. All he could do was pace. He couldn't sleep. It was awful on this medication. And this medication, you can't just stop taking it, because once you start it, you have to really taper off it because it's super dangerous stuff. But he was having just an awful time. And my mother, when my mother starts doing really, really freaking out, it gets pretty scary, because she's like the kind of person that the lights start flashing and everything wherever she goes when she starts to really, really get afraid and freak out. So she was really afraid, and she was wanting us to like be with him 24 hours a day and all of that stuff. And he didn't want us to be with him 24 hours a day, and it was really awkward. He didn't have another bed at his house, and so we were sitting there trying to figure out what to do. And of course, I went in to Mom, let's work a miracle instead, right? So we went in, and I got her to calm, and I got her to use, because her primary way of being is like more like, she has major working of miracles gifting, right? And so we went into this making of a miracle, and we began working on my brother. So we went and we took him into, and I've taken you guys on these before a lot of times, where we go and create a healing place, and we take someone there, right? Especially their etheric body. And then we work on their etheric body with the help of the spirit world and the help of our guides and all those that love the individual involved, right? And we go to this magic place and we begin to work miracles. So we began doing this, and we saw this beautiful liquid that like entered my brother and was basically going through and pulling the poisons out of all of his cells. And my mother saw them going through his feet. And we saw a lot of other really amazing things when we were in this healing vision that we were doing. And next thing you know, my brother texts us. And mind you, I've been like totally on him. Like, you have to be in communication. We're in torment, Are you okay? Did you fall this hour? Right? Because he just couldn't function at all. And we took him to the hospital twice or three times, and they couldn't help him. And but it's just like a dangerous thing to have someone that's not in control of their motor functions, right? Then he texts us and he tells us, he's like, I can feel the poison leaving from my body. Now, we didn't tell him anything about what we were doing. I can feel the poison leaving through my body, and my feet really hurt. So we ended up like opening a valve or something on his feet so that it could go down into the earth or whatever it was. But these were two little miracles. So we're sitting here in this situation where I am terrified I'm going to lose my brother here, right? Any second. And next thing you know, we go into this positive space of creating a miracle, and things transform. And he got off the medication that very next day. He actually felt he could get off the medication, and he had already tapered for a few days, got off the medication, and he's been off it. He's back to his normal self now. And it was a very terrifying thing to see that they can just give people drugs like this and do this to people and mess them up so badly. So anyway, so it was a couple of really amazing miracles that happened. So the thing is that with, we can tune into, like, the more we shift into love, the more we shift into the higher realities, the more we get out of the demonic areas where we are being fed on in negative ways. And there's all these possibilities for miracles that can open for us. So I hope that I'm going to play just that little bit of song for you, Jeannie, too, in case you come back and listen. It doesn't look like you're on right now, but I'm just going to kind of model for you how, through this song, how you can get yourself out of this place, right? This place where the lower energies are just kind of working you over and just continuing to work you over instead of finding the victory and finding your. But this is me going to my inner self, right? So this is the adult me traveling inside of myself in time. My little girl who's hovering around, people pleasing her dad. They can't love her, right? Anyway, so this song is, it's like I'm going to my little girl and I'm saying to her, it's like, it's time to leave him, right? It's time to leave him. He can't love you. There are people that are truly stuck, and my dad is one of those people. right? And I don't know if your dad is stuck too, Jeannie, but he might be getting more and more stuck as he gets older. This happens a lot to people as they get older. But mine happened to my dad really young. He never could really love me, right? And it had nothing to do with me. It just had to do like he couldn't do right action, right? He couldn't. And actually the energy, the demonic energy that was in him tried to kill me many times before I was even born. Like he was really the energies that were in him that he was co-creating with were that had control of his being were really dark, right? But the thing that's been hard is that my little girl just loves him, and getting her to leave him has been my biggest obstacle to my healing. Getting her to let go, to just trust him, to God, right, has been the biggest part that's been hard. So yeah, so this is something that we can do, because the thing is that you can bring your child and you can create a life where people can love you back, where you have safety, where you have people that are treating you with like you are their absolute joy, right? And I'm sure that if your father was in his full and united self, he would be treating you that way, right? Because that's who you are. You are absolutely priceless and precious to him. And I am to my father too, but he's got a lot of stuff in the way, right? And I've come to terms with it that I may not ever have full healing with him in this life. But I do trust that I will have it in the next or the next, right? Like, I know this soul. I love this soul. He is playing a very difficult role for me, and it's been very hard for him to do that, to go this deep into the darkness. And I do love him for it. This catalyst, though, like I have taken the lemons of the situation and I've turned it into lemonade. I've turned it into something beautiful. And I talked for a moment about our Black Lilith. So like my Black Lilith has to do with, I've got like a supernatural almost capacity to emote and have relationships and be caring towards other people and all of that. And it's very difficult because a lot of the people that I've had in my especially early life, they couldn't love me back in the same way that I could love, right? They couldn't give me the level of attention and focus and presence and that I could give to them, right? But I took that as meaning there was something wrong with me, right? So it's like the dark energies flip it around. So I go to connect, there's no connection, and then it somehow in my magical child mind, I get the idea that, and it was probably interjected, that the idea that there's something wrong with me, right? That he can't connect. So like then my life is like always trying to connect up with people that don't have connecting ability, right? And so learning to leave that and actually have people in my life that can give to me, that can reciprocate, has been a really big step for me, right? But if you look at my Black Lilith, it's all about that. It's kind of funny. I could read it to you right now. So the Black Lilith is like the Earth planet with the X on it that's in your chart. And yeah, so mine is in Scorpio. So deep shame around your needs for intimacy, right? Closeness and deeper connection with those that you love. Can get attached easily and get caught up in fantasy and the fantasy world easily. Can get caught up in addictive behavior when you feel like you need attention and deeper connection, right? So like I'm just somebody who is wired up really to need a lot of connection, but I have a lot of shame around how much intimacy I need from people, right? From my partner, from my parents, right? And so this was like a very early thing. So that was an access point for the lower energies to open up my life lesson, which has to do with feeling like I'm unlovable, that there's something wrong with me because these other people can't, they're stuck, right? So that was my real huge thing to kind of see through in this life. And instead of turning it on myself, right? And that's most of our life lessons are turning it on ourselves, right? So if you want to know, if you know what your birth date is and stuff, I will tell you what your Black Lilith is. And if you want to send me your information, your birth date, your time, and your, you can just message me, or you can message in this call, and I'll tell you what yours says, and we'll see if we can find the area of entry point for you. So anyways, have an absolutely wonderful Sunday. I've been talking for like an hour and 20 minutes. I'm a little tired this week, so you can tell it's not quite as magical as usual. I've been tired the last 3 weeks. Maybe I need to take a day off instead of doing some Miracle Sunday. Yeah, I've had a lot of stress in my life, and it's been I'm in this process of learning how to stay connected to my core, stay connected to the bigger parts of me, even though I've got a lot of things going on. So I appreciate your patience. Love to you all, and I hope you have an absolutely miraculous week. Bye-bye.